All right, so what we're going to talk about now is the potential for improvising points of attachment, right? So the main thing when you improvise a point of attachment, always bear in mind is if it's not load rated, don't use it unless you absolutely have to. And when I say that, what I mean is nobody's going to guarantee hooking up to a bull bar. Nobody's going to guarantee hooking up to a chassis rail or an axle. So if you break something, yeah, ultimately it's you. But people make life choices on that when they get bogged and they get stuck. I can tell you, I would be pretty happy to hook up the parts of this vehicle that are not load rated if it's that or stay in the mud for a month. Now, what should we be looking for if we were going to improvise something like this, right? Now these tubes are good, nice big soft radius, right? We can squeeze a shackle in there without going through any equipment. And when we pull it up, we've still got a place for gear, right? So that means that I'd be pretty comfortable with that, right? That doesn't mean I'm recommending you use it, but for me, if I'm making my own decisions, that works for me, right? Now, if we're not doing that, right, then we've got other options. But some of them are bad and some of them will potentially make your situation a lot worse, right? So if we look down here on the vehicle, see this is a tire rod, right? This is the equivalent of a piece of the steering rack for a vehicle that's not live axle. You attach to that, your day's gonna get worse and that's gonna be the end of it, right? Now you can see the axle actually gets obstructed by that going forward. So if you didn't have any bull bar here or anything like that, that is not a good place to pull and it makes the axle not a very good place to pull either, right? Now down the bottom on the knuckle here, right, the drive shaft might rub and damage these, right? But this won't damage the drive shaft. As long as there's no brake lines in the way, right? Through the bottom loop of the knuckle isn't a terrible plan, but it shouldn't be a first port of call. Hi guys, so we're gonna have a crack a little bit of shaky cam here. We're gonna have a look at where we can attach things on the side of this vehicle. So you can see plastic side steps. These are not rock sliders. If I attach to them, I could just be a good opportunity to quickly remove them. Then I could probably put some sliders on, but that's not gonna help my budget or get me out of trouble. Now, if I get down here and I take a look, this little fella here is my my rear lower control arm. Right, this actually is a pretty good place to hook up. This deals with a lot of the vehicle's loads. So if I take a soft shackle, I wrap it around there, right, you can see I've got a good point of attachment that could potentially pull me forward. Got to be a little careful about the sharp edges here. They may limit the life, but they're not going to kill it in one recovery. So if it's getting out of trouble, it might be a good go. If I'm looking further, that's an exhaust pipe. That doesn't carry any load, don't go for that. Drive shaft spins, that's not going to be very much fun. And if you look over there, you're going to see a lot of brake lines and things hanging you down. And none of those are going to work for you either. Now up here, I've got a body mount. So this little fella is structural and will work, but it's not very accessible. If we go for the chassis rails here, what you'll see if we duck ourselves around this side of it, there's a whole bunch of really delicate stuff that we definitely don't want to chop up on there when we put a wrap around it. So every time you're looking for something, right, if you need to improvise something to work, make sure the first thing you do is check to make sure that there's nothing critical wrapped around it that you're going to break. We're over here on the front of the Land Rover here. So this is a really nice little two-door and it's pretty streamlined, which is great if you want to bounce around off-road, but it does present some problems from time to time. One of the ones that it does present is there's no winch and there's no clear or obvious front recovery points either. So when you're looking for something on this, you have the same problem we do with the Jeep, which is don't go for steering, right? There's this bar here, which is on the front, right? Now, that's triangulated, but it's open tube. So you've got to bear in mind, this thing will probably work if you're doing winching or something gentle, but if you do a kinetic pull, you'll potentially break your car, make it worse, right? So you can get something through here, and you're not going to snag yourself a brake line, you're not going to snag yourself some steering. So it will work, but you do put yourself at a bit of a different jeopardy, and that is just pulling a little bit of body off your car, right? So if you're really stuck, and that's the choice between that and stay stuck, I'd do that, but it wouldn't be first plan. If you look here, right, this is a C-section bar, right? So it does have sharp edges on the back. This is an example of somewhere you could potentially get away with it, but expect to have to replace the gear immediately afterwards if you do, right? So if you hook up like this, right, you can see it's lining up and it'll pull. If this slips under load, it'll potentially break, right? So you will potentially cut a shackle. But again, one of the big benefits of all this soft gear is super lightweight, very low energy. It represents a very low risk to human life, right? So you may want to choose to have a think about that. And the thing to bear in mind when you do that is unless you start putting chain links around stuff like this, there is no way to do this with hard gear. That's one of the big benefits of soft shackles. So you can get in and do that sort of stuff.